All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Pereira, and I'm talking to you here today from Kickstarter HQ in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, in New York. And you are joining us for one of our Creator Hangouts. A Creator Hangout is something we do 2 Wednesdays every month. We always invite a creator to join us and spend 30 minutes chatting with us live about their creative project, how they brought it to Kickstarter. They talk about really whatever they want. We invite creators from every one of our 15 categories. So sharing tips from everything from how to make a film to today's topic on how to make a pop-up. Today we're joined by Eric Ho, who is the founder of Miles, which is an incredible platform for launching pop-ups. It started in the LES, that's the Lower East Side for you non-New Yorkers, and is now slowly creeping out into some other cities, but we'll hear more about that in a sec. Before we begin our chat with Eric, I just wanted to remind you all that this is a live chat. So if you are listening and you have a question for Eric, please feel free to ask a question. You can ask a question either here in Google Hangouts or via Twitter at Kickstarter Tips. We may not be able to answer your question immediately, but we will for sure get to you later if we don't get to you during this 30 minutes. All right, that's it. Thanks so much. Hi, Eric.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's great to be joined on this creative hangout. Thanks for
Yeah,
inviting.
and where are you right now, Eric?
I'm in the Lower East Side. I'm actually in the storefront in the Lower East Side on Allen Street, and we do a lot of pop-ups here. Yeah.
Very cool. So I just want to start, since a lot of people might not know what you're up to. Can you just tell us very quickly what it is that you do?
Yeah, so I run a company called Miles. We're a civic startup that activate storefront spaces, underutilized storefront spaces for short-term uses. So we incubate and support young designers, small businesses, local nonprofits to use these spaces for whatever they want to do with them.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And how long has Miles been a thing, either just in your heart or in the real world?
So I think we started the concept of it in summer 2012. So a bunch of us were kind of collaborating online through OpenIDEO, and we were discussing ways to make cities more vibrant. And that's kind of the start of it. We kind of collaborated online. We were chatting on Skype. We were like kind of putting together like proposals, apply for grants, and then we didn't actually get the grant, but we have a 12 months plan.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, the first 3 months actually don't require any money, so
Yeah.
let's just like start on that. So that was 2012, maybe beginning of 2013. Yeah.
Cool. So then tell us how far along were you in the project when you brought the idea to Kickstarter, and then what role did Kickstarter have in helping you to continue the project?
Yeah, so 2013, kind of spring, summerish, we actually got a space to kind of prototype our project, and we were really excited. We got a really small grant, and we actually went into the space and do a few things there, which I might talk about a little bit later. But so soon forward, the end of that sort of prototype period, we were like, okay, let's actually rethink like what we're actually trying to do here and kind of use Kickstarter as a platform to actually prototype sort of what a little bit more on the creative side, like what do we actually want to see in these sort of underused and underutilized spaces, and how do we use the platform to basically showcase the kind of ideas that we have. And that's how we launched that Kickstarter project at the end of 2013. Yeah.
Very cool. And I was lucky enough to meet you just before you launched that Kickstarter
Yeah.
project. And so I got to chat with you a bunch before that launch happened. And I remember you and I were chatting over email about sort of some of the challenges of bringing a project like this to Kickstarter, because obviously it's like totally a no-brainer. Everyone wants to see something like this happen, but it's about free access to spaces. It was a very local project at this time. It was only here in New York City. So when trying to figure out what a Kickstarter campaign looks like for something that is hyper local and that has no thing, right, attached to it, have a bunch of challenges to overcome. So I'd love if you could share some of your insights about what you did and how you overcame those challenges.
Yeah, no, it was an interesting challenge because it was really about access to space, and I think what we really did upfront was how do we create the infrastructure and the tools to kind of get people into the space, and that's why the Kickstarter project is called the Storefront Transformer. It's basically a set of furniture that allows you to do a lot of different things in it. So that immediately sort of gives it more of a product or an experience sort of that is enabled by sort of this design product that we sort of put together. So that was kind of the first step. And then we created a lot of different ways that people can engage with the Storefront Transformer. So we did a lot of prepaid pledges where people can actually use their storefront transformer in the next 6 months in another space, and that actually was got a lot of pledges through that. Oh, people were like, oh, that's a really cool concept. I don't know where is it gonna be, but we're gonna use the storefront transformer to do something, and that was good. And then we also got actually got some sponsorship through Kickstarter, which was interesting, where the brand is actually working with some of the ideas we have to sort of create some experience together. And that was an interesting sort of test also to see like what companies are willing to do through sort of spaces and through products. So that really sort of was a way to sort of get us through sort of that challenge a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super smart. Did you how did you prepare for launching? I mean, this is a long time ago now, but do you remember like how did you prepare? How did you because you obviously did a bunch of smart stuff, right? Like how did you come up with those reward ideas? How did you find those sponsors to pledge at those levels?
Yeah. So I think there's like a bunch of like blogs and guides out there. So it's like one of those that we like follow religiously. It's like, oh, we did 60% of that. Hopefully we'll be okay. And it actually did like work out really well. So we really connected with a lot of people beforehand. Like we, asked them to pledge like the day of the launch. We connected with a lot of bloggers and people that write about us. So that really, really helped. And then I think we actually did, as the project goes, we weren't going to talk to brands for sponsorship. And we were like, okay, this actually may or may not hit our target. Let's actually, since it's live, let's like just keep reaching out. Every day is kind of, it's a full-time job. So every day is kind of like keep reaching out. And that did get us a lot of results that we didn't expect it.
Yeah, that's really cool. And that's not something that everyone knows, is that when you launch a project and things maybe aren't going as you expected, you can always pivot, add new ideas, add new rewards, reach out to new people you hadn't thought of reaching out to. So it's pretty cool that you figured that out. At least, did you figure that out, or did someone help you on that, or where did that idea come from?
I think we had like a few people that were sort of guiding us on, what makes it a successful campaign, and we're kind of like measuring like how much pledge we had, and we're like, if it sort of keeps going in that track, I don't think I know sort of intuitively that we're not gonna hit our target. So I think it was like already day 3 or day 4 that we're like, okay, we need to really do something to change our strategy. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And then I want to ask you one more question about the campaign, and then I want to talk about pop-ups.
Yeah.
And this is just more actually for everyone listening, either now or in the future. I think what you did is really incredible, again, because it's like something for the community. And so it seems like an easy thing to do on Kickstarter, but we know it's hard, as you just described. Yep. So thinking about people who are doing community projects, people who are creating something for a community and trying to engage an audience in that kind of thing, do you have, especially now looking back with your hindsight wisdom, do you have advice for folks thinking about doing something similar to you?
Yeah, I think actually setting the target, not necessarily low, but like sort of managing the expectation of like what you can actually get. Like, let's say, if it's not a global project where it's going viral, a local project really requires like your core sort of community to really pledge and really support. And so understanding who these people are, how many people you can actually reach to, and really, do the math, like, okay, like I know, let's say a few hundred people and they're willing to pledge X amount. That might not be the 100K amount that you sort of originally sort of, let's say, want to have. And so I think having those expectations really clear in the beginning would really help you to sort of hit a more realistic, and you can always sort of add to it, or you can always sort of have sort of a follow-up to like, oh, we reached this target, we can hit another target. So I think I feel like being realistic of like actually the reach you have and how you can reach it, especially if it's a local community, it's important.
That's such good advice. I think setting a realistic goal is one of the top things we suggest people do.
Yeah.
And for people not familiar with the stats page on Kickstarter, we have a stats page where we show like what are people raising on Kickstarter on average, and most people it's between $1,000 and $10,000, and it's on average about $5,000-$6,000 depending on the category. And I think those numbers always sound small compared to what you think of when you think of Kickstarter. You think of 25,000, 50,000, 100,000, but most people are networks. We can bear about a $5,000 or $6,000 project, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So let's talk pop-ups.
Sure.
So I've known you for a while now, and I've been so impressed watching you grow this idea. I remember you telling me like it was just a plan. So growing this idea and this plan into something real. So how did you how does one start? Like I know I've walked down the street a million times and seen vacant storefronts and been like, that'd be cool to do pop-ups in there. Like how do you get from there to someone who's actually running pop-ups?
Yeah. So I guess from my experience of how this came about, or like someone that comes in and do a pop-up, which one is it, I guess?
This is I think you, because you used to be like you were.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I think I have always sort of so my background is actually architecture, so like I've always been sort of passionate about how we can make spaces accessible and available for people, and making design accessible. And the first step is actually getting into a space. And so that is always sort of an intuition that I have. And I think as when this project sort of came about, like it's really kind of how to facilitate that process. And so I noticed that there's a lot of vacant spaces in the city, for a lot of different reasons, but for a very obvious reason. And so the hunch is like, there's a vacant space, a lot of vacant space, and there's a lot of untapped spaces. How can we actually get into them, and how can we utilize them? So that's like kind of the why. And I think through that, it's like just kind of being a novice and being naive about it, and like, okay, let's call up the landlords. Let's call up the sign and like just talk to them and see like why are they being vacant, and then of course there's like a lot of obvious reasons, and then it's like the second is like, okay, how can we actually get to use it? We're gonna pay you. Are you gonna take the money? Why not? And so it's kind of like just
do people say no? Do people say no, we don't want your money?
Yeah. Most people say no.
Most people say no.
Mm-hmm.
How come?
Because so if you're a landlord, or sometimes you're actually talking to a broker, the broker has no incentive to work with you, because rather than working with you, he could be working with someone that take a long-term lease, right? Mm-hmm. So anything that is sort of short-term, it's to them not enough incentive for them to actually take any action. And
that's a huge hurdle.
Was that?
That's a huge hurdle.
Yeah, it's a huge hurdle, and I think some landlords are actually open to it, but it's more immediate. So like, okay, next month I've come in tomorrow, but not like the month after, or if I'm planning a holiday pop-up 6 months away. No, definitely not, because I might have a tenant. And it makes sense, right? Like hey, So I think it's kind of understanding those hurdles that, sort of putting your shoes also into their shoes, and then sort of understanding how they think, and then trying to figure out a way to get into these spaces is kind of that process. And I think it's still really hard, but I think the ability to sort of see a lot of sort of creatives and small merchants actually transforming the space and actually, you know, getting audience, getting a lot of interesting ideas that we've never thought about. Like that is really an empowering process that we're like, yeah, this is worth it. This is really about, you know, supporting, incubating. It's really about like creating exposure that otherwise they won't be available to create exposure. So that's all that is kind of fuse a lot of the things that we do. And then from there, we're like, okay, let's continue to sort of think about how can we think about the back end, how can we think about sort of the infrastructure and the system to enable that to happen.
Wow, okay, there's so much in there.
Sorry.
You're like back-end infrastructure system. So like, okay, we've made the call, we've somehow gotten through to a landlord who's sympathetic to us, and now we have a space.
Yeah.
So what do you say when you're talking about back-end and infrastructure? Like, what does that mean? Like, how do we then activate that space? What do we need to know?
Yeah. So basic things like, right, like does the space have Wi-Fi? Does it even have electricity? Does it are the lighting's working? Like, you know, is everything kind of ready for someone to come in to kind of showcase their work? So kind of what we look at with a lot of these spaces is making sure that those are kind of in place instead of not, and kind of also making sure that someone that's coming in is also has all the right insurances, has all the right sort of let's say if you're selling a product, you know, have all the right sort of paperwork to actually, you know, you actually can sell a product and you can, you know, you can track the sales tax and all that. So we kind of make sure that, you know, in terms of the legal and legality of it, like, you know, it's tight. And then on the experience front, you know, we will say, hey, you know, there's a guy that does decal down the street, and they're really affordable, and you can really, and we feed all our business to like some of these local business owners.
Yeah.
And those are the things that we could provide, so that when someone come into the space, they're just focusing on their story, focusing on driving their audience instead of worrying about, oh, where should I get furniture? Where should I get chairs? Where should I get, you know, the projector? So they can focus their energy on sort of the content that they put together. Yeah.
That's incredible. So is this all stuff that you and that Miles figured out just through trial and error, just like by helping to launch so many pop-ups? He learned so much along the way.
Yeah, it's really kind of learning from our customers, observing how our customers behave, and kind of, you know, talking to them like, you know, hey, you know, with this help, sometimes they may or may not be able to pay for these sort of extra services. And that's always a challenge. But I think we understand what would be better for them and what would make their life a little bit easier. And that's kind of how we operate. Like, you know, we want to make this a really good experience for you. With, you know, pop-up there's so much to it. And I always say, you know, there's like 10 steps to it. If we can help you solve 4 steps, you know, that's already a win. And you just need to figure out the next 6. We can't do everything for you because you still have to do your own work. But if we can solve 4 of your, you know, of your 10 items, then that's great.
Are there really 10 steps, or is that just like an example you threw out there?
No, there's probably around 10. Yeah.
That's really cool. So you've like really broken it down to a science.
Yeah, well, a little bit. Like, kind of, we wrote a pop-up primer. So the primer actually has like a 9 square grid where the 9 things that you need to figure out. And yeah, it's really, a lot of it is logistics. A lot of it is like just kind of a checklist of things that you need to think about.
Yeah, that actually reminds me. In addition to the primer, which is available on your website, you wrote an excellent process post for us for our Medium publication. I should have said that right at the top. But it's really great. And I think we asked you to do it forever ago, but we finally got around to publishing it with the intent of doing it as a companion to this chat. And while you, speaking of that and your primer both, what do you think, like, what is like the #1 thing that people will find in there that's really good for them?
Yeah, I think I would say, and this might be sort of an extension to the article too. It's really kind of really know what you're trying to do. Sometimes a lot of people don't know like what their objective is. They're like, "Oh, let's do a pop up. It's so cool."
Yeah.
But I think understanding where your brand or project is too is kind of like relating to running a Kickstarter campaign. It's like understanding where you stand and what is your objective of sort of this pop up. So I can see kind of two kinds of people coming to us to do a pop-up. One is they already have like a really good audience. They maybe have been an online shop for like 3-4 years, or they already have done events, and they would come in to do an experience to kind of capitalize on sort of that social capital that already have, and kind of and sometimes that means sales.
Yeah.
Sometimes that means, I'm actually gonna, sell a product that, because of the social connection that I have. And the majority of the other kind is actually people that may or may not have the exposure, but it's using this experience to gather that exposure and gather that social capital. And I think that's also hugely important and sort of valuable, but don't expect you're gonna like sell a lot of products because you don't have the sort of capital to kind of translate that the financial part of it. But I think that's still really valuable, and a lot of people have really good experiences. People coming out from the pop up like, oh, this is a brand that I really want to follow and like keep sort of knowing about like what's the next thing, how to get online to get to their stuff. So I think that's something that I think knowing your brand, knowing who you are, and then setting an objective to do it, and not sort of have a good expectation of what you're doing.
Yeah, very cool. That's incredible advice. That is such a good takeaway. Thank you.
Yeah, no.
Um, Related to that, I know when we were prepping for this, I can't remember if this was something you sent us or that I read, or I don't know where I read it. But I was catching up on some of the incredible pop-ups that you helped to host over the past while.
Yeah.
And I remember the Design Gym, their
Yeah.
taco shop / creative gym.
Yeah.
Came up, and then that beautiful, on like the flip side, the incredible shoe shop. So, I mean, it struck me in that moment of the incredible range of things that you've hosted and helped to host. I wonder if you talk a little bit about that. What's maybe like the coolest pop-up that you guys have gotten to work on, and maybe what's like, or no, don't say name specifics, but maybe it's like, what's the worst idea for a pop-up? But don't name names. Don't hurt anybody.
Wow, worst idea.
Or what's the worst? I mean, what should someone never reproduce?
I don't think
That actually sounds fun.
Yeah, I think I'll start with kind of the good ones.
Yeah, that's always the best.
We did a really cool experience called a Museum of Beautiful People. So there were actually people that were exhibited in the space, and people were actually watching these people sort of in the space. So it's to me,
just
it's
like
kind
watching them be beautiful.
watching them just being who they are, and beautiful is kind of a quote unquote, like I don't know what the creator really means by beautiful, and so it was a really interesting sort of social experiment. So it's like combining sort of a social kind of commentary to like an art experience. So I think that was a really cool sort of experience that it's like there's a shock, like it's like you go in, it's like, what am I supposed to do? And I think to me that's a really successful pop-up. It's like, oh, this is like out of like, oh, it's not a bookstore, it's not a museum, it's not like a cafe, like I don't know what to do here. And I think that to me it's like really interesting.
Really cool.
The other really cool one is it's called Popo Gelato, and it's actually by the 17-year-old teenager that went and to Italy and learned how to make gelato. And so we actually, through a chef, we actually got him all the right licenses to actually sell legally. And he did a 1-month pop-up shop and in the Lower East Side. And he got so much press, so much So much people talking about him. There's like lines out the door, and he got poached by a lot of like big Ivy League schools just because of that. And it was really weird. It's like seeing like all these little pieces sort of tied together, and it was pretty amazing. Yeah.
That's so fun. That's so fun. How do these people find you? How do they hear of Miles?
So a lot of it is through word of mouth, like through also like sometimes like through a lot of them actually have come to some pop-up events and were like, oh, this is a great space. Like and then talking to the person that actually has hosted the event and say, you know, hey, how do you find the space? How did you make this happen? And a lot of it actually is through that. And then we do very little marketing. So it's really word of mouth. It's really kind of through these experiences that people come to, and that's the majority of how we get our clients. Yeah.
That's very cool. So we've heard a bit about where you came from, where you've been. In the little tiny bit of time we have remaining, I would love to know where you're going. What's next? You've like nailed this. What's next?
You know, we're always sort of rethinking and rewriting our like mission and vision. So I think our sort of new, and this is like probably like end of last year, we're like, you know, we're really about making our cities more vibrant and more diverse. And we want to do it in every city. We want to do it neighborhood by neighborhood. So that's kind of our vision, is how do we sort of really help lower the entry barrier for a lot of these creatives, these small businesses, and really cultivate the diversity of them to go into a physical space. So that's kind of our vision. And I think we're doing it with a lot of different things that we're testing this year. So we're like kind of throwing a lot of these things out. So we're doing a few education things. One is called a do tank. We're actually having a do tank session here in this space.
I know a do tank.
In five minutes.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, we're actually starting at 6:30. So we are, the do tank is an action-oriented design thinking course that is tied to a local challenge. And it ends in a pop-up.
Wow, cool.
Yeah. And we're working with Tiananmen Museum on this one. And so we have the do tank, which is more civic focused. How do we cultivate a community to think more about urban spaces and go into a physical space to prototype these ideas? And then we have another education thing called the Experience Lab. It's really about digital and physical user experience and tying them together, and ends with a pop-up as well. And then we also are sort of innovating on some co-retail opportunities where instead of everyone taking one shop as a pop-up, is more, you know, a few brands coming together and sharing sort of the resources, sharing sort of the price, and do something together, and really sort of lowering the entry barrier for small businesses. And last but not least, we're actually prototyping a neighborhood chapter approach of what we're doing. So that's something that we're sort of still working out and testing out, and selecting a few neighborhoods that we know could be interesting to start sort of experimenting on. Yeah.
Wow, that's so much stuff.
Yeah.
How big is your team?
We have 4 people. Yeah. Yeah.
So incredible. Okay, this is great advice for your fellow creative minds. How do you get so much done with a team of 4 people?
I don't know. I guess we're just creatives, and I think we just keep like trying to like throw things out and see what works and what doesn't work. I don't know.
That's really real. I mean, I talk every day. I talk to people who are like you, people who had an idea. Somewhere along the way, they may have launched a Kickstarter project, right? And now they have a thing in the world. And I think the challenge of continuing to grow and to innovate and to like keep your idea as vibrant as it was on day one is a real challenge.
Yeah, I think it's just passion. There's passion and patience.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Yeah.
It's the heart. It's hard to put those two together. But, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I think that's a great sentiment to go out on, Eric. So nice to see you. It's been way too long. Thank you also for sharing that post with us on Medium. I encourage anyone who enjoyed this video and hearing from Eric to go to medium.com/@KickstarterTips and check out the posts. Go to Miles. What's your website?
Miles.city.
Miles.city, what a great URL. Go to miles.city, learn more about what Miles has been up to. And if you enjoyed this Hangout, we do them live twice a month. So go to our Facebook page, go to the event section and subscribe to get notified whenever we host another event. So
Great.
thanks, Eric.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great seeing you. Bye-bye.
Great. Bye.